There are so many new adventure bikes on the market, and do you know which one I decided to buy? None of them. In fact, I'm going to tell you why, if you're getting into adventure riding, why buying a second-hand bike might actually be the best option. Insurance valuation will tell us that we'll lose 20 to 30% of our value of the bike in the first couple of years. And that's for a road bike. So that's a bike that doesn't get dropped in the dirt and so on. However, if you're planning to keep the bike for 5 years or more, then that's probably tolerable. But looking at bike sales, you'll probably see there's a whole bunch of Tenere 700s with all the gear on them, and they've only got a couple of thousand Ks on the clock. That's probably throwing away $10,000. If it's a new bike warranty that you're after, then grab that 10K, drop it into a separate account, only draw on it if something breaks, and then that money's sitting there if you want to invest on a new bike later on. Warranty is just insurance anyway. From what I've seen, the threshold for motorcycle values tends to be around the $5,000 mark for secondhand. So a bike like this one, where I paid $5,000 for this 2008 GS, it was probably worth $5,000 a couple of years ago. It'll probably be worth $5,000 in another couple of years from now. So if I buy it at that value, I can probably sell it a couple of years later for the same amount, unless I break it. So in other words, if you're getting into adventure riding and you're not sure whether you like it or not, buy something around the 5K mark, and then if you don't like it, you haven't lost any money. The best thing about buying a second-hand bike is it already has all the gear on it. Tyres, exhaust pipe, racks, spark busters, bash plate, crash bars, everything you'd need to spend. That's probably 5K worth of gear already spent by someone else. So modern bikes are going to come with a lot better suspension, there's no doubt about that. Compared to an old 2008 GS to a brand new one with electronically controlled suspension and everything's adjustable and so on. Dash up here and you can change whatever you want to change. The way I look at it, is that going to mean that I can or can't get to that campsite that I want to get to? Probably not. This one's really basic. I've got preload and I've got rebound adjustment. That's it, really basic. At the end of the day, I'm still going to get there. The thing is, if you're really into suspension and you want the best suspension there is, then you're probably going to upgrade it anyway. So therefore, it doesn't matter whether you buy secondhand or new. So I'm probably going to upgrade the suspension on this because I tend to hang on to it for a little while. But if you don't care about having the best suspension, then it doesn't matter anyway. Similar to cars, motorcycles tend to get bigger as they get more modern. So when you're looking at older bikes, they tend to be a little bit lighter and a little bit leaner. A little bit more agility in them. So that's worth considering as well. By the way, any bike that's up to 1200 cc's, anything over 1000 cc's gets really expensive for rego and insurance, particularly 1200 and above. So consider that when you're getting an adventure bike. Do you need bigger? Probably not. Bigger isn't better. Now, the last key point I'm going to make is probably one that's going to, I don't know, not fit with everyone because everyone's different. However, probably the number one reason for buying a secondhand bike is psychological. When you're going out and you're learning adventure riding, you're getting into it for the first time, how are you going to feel about dropping a bike that you've just spent 20 to 30 grand on and it's perfect versus dropping one that you've spent 5K on and it's already scratched up, so it's not going to really matter so much? Will that make the difference to whether you go a certain path or not? Will that make the difference between you feeling willing to go? Will it actually make you feel a little more uncomfortable about riding in a particular way? Will that actually affect how you ride? That's something to consider. Again, as I said, it's not for everyone. Some people couldn't give a rat's ass. Some people can spend 20 to 30 grand on a bike and happily throw it down the road. But personally, I can't do that. I have a little bit of too much mechanical sympathy. So having a bike that's already secondhand means it's already been through a few bit of stuff and I don't have to worry about it so much. All right, for those who are interested, who've been following me for a little while, obviously I've just come off the Tenere 660. Why did I buy this particular bike? Well, Story goes, basically, I wasn't actually considering buying a bike for myself. I was looking for a bike for my son. And a friend of mine, Bill, which you've seen on other videos, he said he was selling his, and he said, why don't you buy this and then Lockie can ride the Tenere. So that's where that came about. It is a 2008 F800 GS, 207 kilos wet, which is pretty lean for a bike. And you look at some of the modern ones that have really been leaned out, they're still around that same mark. So typical to a modern bike. However, 85 horsepower, which is actually 13 more horsepower than a Tenere 700, just by the way. So it's actually more powerful. The Rotex motor. Now, Rotex actually are the world's biggest supplier of lightweight petrol-powered engines. And they're good enough for aeroplanes, so they're good enough for me. One of the criticisms of this bike is the fuel tank in the back. Now, my opinion on this is that's a bad thing when the fuel tank's full. However, as the tank starts to empty, then your battery, your airbox and everything that's up here forward is actually in a better position then. So yes, on a full tank, not so great, but on a lower tank, when you're actually starting to get into the tougher stuff, I actually think it's a better thing, because the battery, airbox is up nice and high for river crossings, and the battery and everything is a bit further forward than it ordinarily would. So as the tank gets lower, the weight moves further to the front, which is a good thing. The brand of BMW, I guess, you know, when you pick a particular brand, you tend to be a little biased towards it. And we've got a couple of BMWs. I drive my dailies a 330i. My wife has an X3. And when this came up as an opportunity, then I thought, well, I was kind of drawn to it, I have to say. And you know what? Who invented dual sport riding in the first place anyway? Who was the inventor of adventure riding? BMW. The reason I'm in love with this bike is because of the overall experience. I want to enjoy the whole trip from leaving the front door to arriving back again at the other end of the trip, not just the dirt bits. Now, the Tenere 660 is going to be better in the dirt, and this is a slight compromise on the dirt. However, for trips like Sydney to the Gold Coast, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, I personally will have a much better experience on this bike than I would have on the Tenere, because I'm going to enjoy every part of the trip, including the trip back, which will be mostly sealed. So that is why I chose a BMW. Like, I know in theory the Tenere is a better bike on the dirt, and I have no doubt that I'm not outriding it. You know, my skills are less than what it's capable of doing. I have no doubt of that. And a more skilled rider will do a lot better on that same bike. But I also don't feel like this is a compromise, personally. I feel like I'm doing the same stuff, I have the same control, the same ability on this as I do with the Tenere. So I don't feel like this is a step down at all in the dirt.